Hey everyone, welcome to our discussion. Today we're diving into a fascinating deep dive into the state of global conflict. The piece we're looking at examines whether the optimistic prediction from a decade ago that war is over still holds true. It's a pretty big question, right? What are your initial thoughts on this?
Well, it's a complex issue with no easy answers. 10 years ago, certain long term trends suggested a decline in violent conflict. But the world is constantly changing, and recent events have certainly thrown a wrench into that optimistic view. We'll need to look at the data carefully to see what the trends really show.
Absolutely. The analysis relies heavily on data from the Uppsala Conflict Data Program, UCDP, right? What makes UCDP a good source, and are there any limitations we should be aware of?
UCDP is widely considered the most comprehensive and commonly used source for data on armed conflicts. It provides consistent data on conflict types, numbers, and death tolls, allowing for comparisons across countries and time. However, it's crucial to remember that death tolls might be underreported, and UCDP itself acknowledges this. Their definitions and inclusion criteria also influence the numbers.
So, how does the analysis account for this underreporting? Is there a way to get a more complete picture?
The analysis acknowledges the underreporting issue and cites studies that attempt to quantify the uncertainty around UCDP's reported fatalities. These studies suggest underreporting, especially for extremely violent conflicts. While a perfectly accurate number is impossible, acknowledging the limitations and considering other sources helps to paint a more nuanced picture.
That makes sense. Let's talk about some specific conflicts. The analysis mentioned several that were prominent in 2014, like the wars in Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and South Sudan. How have these conflicts evolved in the last decade?
Some of these conflicts have seen significant changes. The Afghan war ended with the Taliban's victory. The civil wars in Yemen and Libya have largely become stalemates, though humanitarian crises persist. The ISIS proto-state in Iraq and Syria has been largely defeated, although remnants remain. And surprisingly, the analysis reports that the Syrian rebels recently toppled Assad's government. The situation in South Sudan remains fragile despite a peace agreement.
Wow, those are some dramatic shifts. But the analysis also points out that many new conflicts have emerged or old ones have reignited since 2014. What are some of the most significant examples?
Absolutely. The Tigray War in Ethiopia, the Sudan Civil War, the ongoing conflict in Myanmar, and the various Islamist insurgencies in Africa are all significant examples. These conflicts have caused immense suffering and death.
It sounds like the picture is far more complicated than a simple war is over narrative. The analysis also discusses the types of conflicts. What's the main takeaway regarding the nature of modern warfare?
A key point is that civil wars, or interstate conflicts, remain the most common type of state-based conflict. There's no universally agreed upon definition of civil war, but the analysis uses UCDP's categorization, which helps to clarify the data.
And what about the death tolls? How did the numbers from the last decade compare to previous periods?
The analysis shows a significant increase in deaths from organized violence in recent years, particularly in 2022, reaching levels not seen since the Rwandan genocide. The Tigray War and the war in Ukraine were major contributors to this increase.
That's alarming. The analysis also touches on the role of external powers in prolonging conflicts. How significant is this factor?
Extremely significant. Many conflicts are fueled by external support, whether it's from states, non-state actors, or local elites who benefit from the chaos. This external involvement often complicates peacemaking efforts and prolongs the violence.
So, what about the democratic peace theory? Does the analysis offer any insights into that?
Yes, the analysis notes the continued absence of wars between democracies, supporting the democratic peace theory. However, the increase in interstate wars in recent years challenges some of the assumptions underlying this theory.
Interesting. The analysis also discusses the impact of historical factors, particularly colonialism and Soviet influence, on current conflicts. Can you elaborate on that?
The analysis suggests a strong correlation between regions that were under colonial or Soviet influence and those experiencing current conflicts. Arbitrary borders, unequal resource distribution, and power vacuums created by these historical forces continue to fuel instability and conflict.
It's a sobering perspective. The analysis also mentions the shift towards a multipolar world. What does that mean in the context of global conflict?
The shift towards multipolarity, with the rise of new powers like China, is changing the global power dynamics. This can lead to increased competition, tensions, and the potential for more conflicts between states.
And what about military spending? How does the analysis address that aspect?
The analysis notes the significant increase in military spending globally, particularly in Europe following the war in Ukraine. It also highlights the difficulty in comparing military budgets across countries due to differences in reporting and accounting practices.
So, to wrap things up, what's the overall message of this analysis regarding the state of global conflict?
The analysis paints a complex picture. While the 21st century has so far been relatively peaceful compared to previous centuries, recent years have seen a sharp increase in violence. The optimistic prediction that war is over clearly doesn't hold true anymore. The rise of multipolarity, the resurgence of interstate wars, and the continued impact of historical factors all contribute to a more uncertain and potentially more dangerous future.
It sounds like we need to be prepared for a more complex and challenging geopolitical landscape. Thanks for shedding light on this important topic.
You're welcome. It's a crucial discussion to have.
Absolutely. The analysis highlights the importance of understanding the complexities of global conflict, acknowledging the limitations of data, and considering the interplay of historical, political, and economic factors.
Precisely. It's not just about numbers, it's about understanding the underlying causes and dynamics of conflict.
The analysis emphasizes the need for a nuanced understanding of conflict, going beyond simplistic narratives.
Yes, the reality is far more intricate than simple generalizations.
The analysis underscores the limitations of relying solely on one data source, like UCDP, and the importance of cross-referencing with other sources.
Absolutely. Triangulating data from multiple sources is crucial for a more accurate assessment.
The analysis also points out the significant role of external actors in fueling and prolonging conflicts.
This is a critical point often overlooked in simpler analyses.
The analysis highlights the continued relevance of historical factors, such as colonialism and Soviet influence, in shaping current conflicts.
Understanding these historical roots is essential for comprehending present-day conflicts.
Finally, the analysis concludes that despite recent increases in violence, we are still living in a relatively peaceful period compared to previous centuries. However, the future remains uncertain. Thank you for this insightful discussion.